Good evening, everyone. That time of the week once again. Got some nice stuff lined up this week, especially the Koi Appreciation one. I've had some fun digging through my archives and some great fish tucked away in there from over the years. And I've pulled out one hell of a kohaku that I once supplied that was a very successful Azukari result in Japan as well. So I'm sure you're going to absolutely love seeing that one. And this week, I've managed to get a guest who I'm sure is going to add a lot of value. My companion over at Koi Talk, Chris Wall. I managed to get him to wash all the baby sick off. He's going to put in an appearance and hopefully add some value. But while we're on that topic, folks, just going to give this a quick plug. Issue 15 is out now. And on the it's on our store if you're not a subscriber and you want to get the back issue. But while we're on that, me and Chris have decided to be very, very generous today. And if you would like to get caught up on some of the back issues, there's a promotion. If we can get the code on the screen, 50% off back issues until the end of the week. So if you're wanting to get them archives filled up or you've missed out on some, go for it. Use that code and get them ordered. But yeah, issue 15 in particular offer applies to that as well. And loads of great stuff in that one. So other than that, obviously these temperatures are quite insane. I think it goes without saying it's a time when you've really got to be on it with the koi and just really, really paying attention to them oxygen levels more than anything. You cannot get too much water circulation in weather like this, too much aeration pumping in there. With the heat as it is, oxygen saturation levels, even at 100% saturation, are low in a milligrams per litre count when the warmer it gets. So you can expect to see, if it gets on the extreme end, like I'm suffering with in the greenhouses at the minute. I have had one pond that's sort of with some bigger fish that's gone off the boil with the food completely, which I'm having to manage. Not too much I can do, but certainly had to step away from the food because digestion is going to further, cause issues and put more pressure on there. So, pay attention to it, guys. If you see them fish gasping, do what you can, get that water circulating, moving in as many places and areas as you can. I think it's a pretty basic one to hit, but do pay attention to it. So, last one from me before we get stuck into it and get Chris in. Please, if you're just watching, hit the like button, hit share. The audience count is building every week, and loads of you guys do catch up on this on YouTube and Facebook once we're done, of course. But it'd be nice to get as many people in as we can, as many questions as we can, and as much diversity. It'd be absolutely great. So without me nattering on anymore, let's bring Chris in if he's still awake. Evening,
Just
mate.
Ricky, how are you doing?
I'm sound, mate. I'm sound. How are you?
Oh, it's an honour to be here, Rick. Thanks for having me.
I've dragged you away, mate. You're going to get a good idea when you get downstairs and you've left it to it.
That's it, mate. Yeah, that's it. So, all good. Just seeing how hot the human body can get before I melt. So, it's all good.
I know. Crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. So I believe we're in the podcast studio tomorrow as well, aren't we?
Yes, it's thick and fast now, mate. So yeah.
So anybody, again, if you're not tuned into that, on the Koi Talk channel, everything we've got, you can watch on YouTube as well. But if you're in the car, most of the podcast channels out there, you can pick that up on. And we're just going with slightly different format now, where we're covering sort of one topic per episode, so we can keep farming them out on a more regular basis and keep that information coming. So, mate, let's get on with some questions and see what we've got. I think an interesting one I've just seen here. This is just coming tonight from Simon. Following recent discussion on trickle in, trickle out, I've stopped and now replacing water from 2 weekly Nexus cleans with tap water put into a separate holding tank. Very nice. Loving the effort there. Very curious, Simon, seeing as though you are watching. Have you done that for a reason? Was you noticing problems with your fish? Have you noticed any difference since? Obviously, any feedback it'd be great. But good on you for sorting that one out. We'll move on from that, and if you can get pop us a bit more feedback in the comments, that would be much appreciated. Wow, someone getting personal, Chris.
Yeah,
I agree. I honestly, I'm getting a completely easy ride about all that. So as you can imagine,
yeah,
not easy, mate, is it?
no, never has McDonald's seemed more appealing right now.
Brilliant. Right. Anyway, enough prating about. Let's see what other questions we've got tucked away in here. So let's have a look. This one caught my eye actually. Oh, Steve's fighting with me in the background. Oh, hang on. Let's wait till that's gone. Right. For some reason, there we go. Right. I'm looking to move into the show scene next year after completion of my pond build. Any info for selecting koi in size 3 to 4 to start with? Budget around £1,000 to £1,500 per fish. You go first, Chris. What's your advice on this one?
I think it's a good question. Really is a good question. I think the show scene is all about managing expectations and realizing that what you're up against is out of your control, both with the judging and the fish that you're going up against. So the budget that you've got in place, I think, is realistic. That's one thing. It's not to say that you can't get show fish for less than that. It's not to say you can't get show fish for a lot more than that, because we know you can. But I think it's a good budget there if you're looking at sort of that sort of size. I think there's you've obviously done a bit of reading. You've got a degree of expectation of what can be achieved. I think with the show scene, it is all about managing expectations and enjoying the process of it, learning. If you go in there to massage an ego or anything like that, then it's not the right place to be, in my opinion. Showing koi is all about learning, progression, seeing what makes a winner. I think you've got a good starting point there. It's not all about budget, but I think that's testament when you look at the baby champions over the last probably 5 or 10 years. A lot of them are not particularly expensive fish. I had a customer, I don't know if you can remember, Rick, that we sourced quite high-end NND Sankey for to try and compete.
Do you remember it well?
Absolutely spanking fish. And on the day, it didn't do anything, and it cost the customer quite a lot of money. It lost to a fish that cost 250 quid. So, yeah, it's quite a complex question. That is good question. Yeah,
I think you're right in the expectation. My bit on this is managing expectations around that budget. You're right, you can do it on that, but also managing what you do actually get for that budget as well, because it's a healthy budget. And I've seen in the past where all of a sudden, it's like I've got £1,500 budget, and that buys you a potential champion, so to speak, which in the grand scheme of things, I completely accept it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to spend on a fish. However, in the grand scheme of things, in koi, there's some farms where you can't even, the sort of size fish you're talking about, you literally can't buy something that's got 2 heads. Well, that'd probably be quite rare, to be honest. It's probably quite expensive, but it's not. You're not buying anything. Let's say we're talking Dainichi, who's going to have a lot of attributes, doing well to a show. That kind of budget, you're struggling to fish around with Tosai at any sort of level. So you've really got to get all these bits in line. And I think the biggest bit for me and biggest concern is, if obviously the show scene becomes a big thing, is not to let that become a detriment to enjoying the hobby. Because I have seen that, and I know I've spoke about this before. I've seen it take people down, the obsession of trying to meet the criteria they think the judges are looking for, and I don't even know what them guys are looking for over here, in all honesty. We aren't getting too much into it because I'm not in mood for creating an onslaught tonight. But
go on, mate.
Yeah, You just don't. And I have seen people trying, and then it's all of a sudden you become more focused on trying to meet this criteria you think's ticking the boxes for the judges, and actually don't bother and forget about learning about true quality, because I think sometimes true quality doesn't come through and get the accreditation it shows in this country. See that all the time, and that prime example, that Sankey Chris mentioned, that was true quality. That was me stood there, Chris stood there, the breeder stood there, who's got massive show pedigree in Japan, all saying this fish should do really well, and the condition with everything sort of thing. Like I say, it didn't even get looked at. And when you see fish that have won prestigious awards in Japan come over to the UK and then get nothing, you know, all of a sudden there you're dealing with something that you're never really truly going to get your head around. So if you let that be your guiding force, all it's going to do is create insanity, trust me. Whereas what you need to be doing is on focusing getting the best fish for your money, and making sure you understand quality properly. And then you've got to also consider, what are you going to do here? Are you going to look for a fish that's primed to win at them sizes? Because you're probably going to be looking at a slightly different fish to, am I going to buy one that maybe's got half a chance right now, but then in future, as it hits another size, as you rear it, that potential comes alive. So you've got more longevity out of it for winning, hopefully, in the future.
I think, sorry, Rick. Yeah, I think you touched on that. That's a pretty good point there. Obviously, when you're selecting fish, are you buying show fish for now or the future? There's a bit of a saying, you've heard it, Rick, many a time, not many baby champions go on to be grand champions, and there's a reason for that. You know, the makeup of the fish that's right for winning a show on one day might not be the criteria that a fish requires when it's 70, 80 centimeters. So it's, you know, are you trying to invest in good quality fish for the future, or are you trying to win prizes now? And most people,
I don't think it's a mindset we're used to over here. In Japan, people will literally buy a fish to challenge for a size and whatever it is, a category for that particular show, and maybe one other show within a few months of it. That's it, and all the work and effort goes into that. There are some that progress through. We see at the very highest level, there might be one that wins a Kukugyo award, a decent size. You're going to be a bigger size, and probably Nisai or something like that can work through. But these fish are rare beasts, and you see them progress, and they just tend to keep winning and winning and winning as they go along. Well, that's not normally the case. And like I say, I literally, I've done it myself this year. There's fish I bought for competing, thinking that is primed and ready to go now. Because sometimes, you know, what it takes to win in the lower sizes, the lower boo divisions in Japan, means there'll be probably compromises in the fish if I'm looking at it long term. Sashi being one area, if we're looking at Sashi with Kohaku, for example. In a fish of longevity, I'm going to expect to see a nice bit of Sashi on there, but that compromises its show potential at, say, 18 boo or something like that, because if there's one there with really polished, tight, clean Sashi, it's going to probably be more favourable than the other one. So, yeah, really got to decide, but just don't let it detract away from enjoying the hobby and just learning about true quality. Because you've got to get that bit down first of all, and like I say, don't try and think you can predict what the judges want, because I do think it will just drive you insane and ruin the hobby for you. So that's my advice on that one. See what else we've got, Chris. Now we've got this sort of follows on from it. Show scene question: built a relationship with a reputable dealer and let them help advise you on options when starting the show scene. You need to have that. I agree with, but obviously the dealer that you're dealing with has got to have some kind of. You've got to know that they know what they're on about when it comes to picking the right fish for it and truly understanding quality. that's not every dealer's bag. You know, there's a variety of different dealers. It supplies all over the world, and it's about knowing where they're at in what you're doing, because it's again, this is going to go completely off topic, but overused people advertising fish as show quality, for example. It's something I don't like the whole tatigoi word that gets sort of used and abused from a sales pitch. And I've just said that I have no clue really what these judges over here, the criteria is. So as much as fish I, think, have an inkling, got the quality to do it, certainly no guarantees. But I agree, if you know the dealer's got some pedigree in that area, or some kind of reputation on winning some prizes, then by all means let them help and let them guide you. It's a good point. Right, let's have a look. There's that many to work through. I never know which one to pick. Oh, here we go. We were just discussing this one before we come on air, weren't we? So I'm toying with the idea of having my two air bottom drains on a timer to come on early morning for 2 hours and then late evening. I love the look of them when turned off. Will it stress my koi, Chris?
Yeah, aerated bottom drains. Obviously, being involved in a lot of design aspects over the years, it's sort of, they've gone full circle now. They've gone from being the be all and end all and the advantages that come with them to kind of then, the aeration of a pond can be done in different ways or behind the scenes, so to speak. So I think turning the air pumps on and off, I don't think you're really going to do any favours for the fish feeding regime. That's going to stress them. They're going to get spooked when you turn them back on. Air pumps, I guess if you're really being nitty gritty, you could argue that they're not really designed to be turned on and off. Yeah, I don't think you're going to gain much personally other than a visual thing. If that were really your issue, then I would possibly look at the system and see if you could aerate in your filter units and have a more calm effect, or lessen the aeration through the bottom drains. That'd probably be my interesting question. Funny enough, it's something that a lot of people are doing more and more of. They start off with an aerated bottom drain, and then they soon realise that the volcano of air completely interrupts the viewing pleasure of the fish. Having sort of retrospectively tweaked a lot of ponds over the years, it's completely achievable to aerate the pond without aerating within the pond, if that makes sense. So that will depend on your setup. That would require sort of testing dissolved oxygen levels. So I'm happy if you want to PM me and send me some images you set up. I can offer some direct advice, because I don't know what the setup that you've got is, but I would probably steer clear of turning the drains on and off personally. That would be my.
That's the big bit for me to stay well away from, because koi are so sensitive to their environment and the stability of that environment. That is a big one that they know. Generally, air on, air off, they get to know that pattern. It's going to create such a big change in the environment that, without a doubt, it's going to be very unsettling for them. I think you'll interrupt their feeding pattern. They won't be very happy with it.
Purely that sound as well.
Even more beyond that.
That sound going on and off, and the resonation through the pond walls and everything like that. So I just think it's undue versus the benefits that you're going to gain. I would say maybe look at the bigger picture.
While we're on that topic, I mean, I'm not a big fan of aerated bottom drains. I think we spoke about this before, but I like to use one directional current in my systems in that longer pond. So if I can get everything return, showers, air at one end of the pond, that's exactly the way I want to do. Create that flow down. I don't like the sort of up-down current that it creates. I think it's quite unsettling. It's not natural for koi. And in small ponds where you see it, sort of smaller square ponds where it's belting up out the middle, there's that much current, it's hitting the sides, and that's just not a great environment to be in. And I've seen that play out a lot of times, the sort of stress that's caused in fish. So I think the whole thing of aerated drains, tangential returns, all the rest of it, all came in from a time that was just designed for what's best to try and remove waste from the pond. But waste settlement, I don't really think it's that big of an issue. And we're talking about here designing a pond on what's best for the koi, in my opinion, not what's best for us. And without a doubt, what's best for koi is to have that flow banked at one end, and yeah, let it work that way. Certainly for feeding for bigger fish, it creates an environment where they've got a steadier area to feed from as well, where they're not having to fight mass currents. Just better all around. So if you're building a new pond, certainly one to think about. Even if you've got one at the minute, it's something worth playing around with to see if you get notice any difference, because I think you will do, to be honest. Right, seen a good one, Chris. Yeah, I think this is something that we are really what we're trying to say on this. I'm just sort of keep re-clarifying. So just to clarify, the trickle out issue, surely it's all about flow rates. If you're changing 10 to 40% per week via trickle in, then that's fine. Changing huge amounts per day probably isn't great. I'm going to start with this one, Chris. I'll let you clear on any points. So this is, I think, what we're talking about here is we're talking about flow rates through dechlorinator units, and that's looking more at chlorines and chloramines, which we can deal with through good purification. The drum me and Chris is banging is that there's so much more to just chlorines and chloramines in water that you want to be analysing full stop. And yeah, I mean, volumes of water changing. Again, I'm not a massive advocate of doing huge amounts. I top up and from filter maintenance that's needed, and that's what the pond gets every week. Because as it stands, until I know my water's good as well. I've had my water checked and screened. Other than when we get variations in chlorine levels, there's nothing else nasty sat there beneath. Everything's within reasonable levels. But that's the bit that we're on about here, because if there's a metals problem lurking in that water, and it doesn't matter the means, if you're trickling or doing big water changes, putting lots of fresh water in, and there's metals sat there, those metals levels are being constantly added to that body of water. They're building up in that body of water. They're going to be building up within the koi as well. So that toxicity level is going to build. And just all we're getting at is, until you fully understand what's happening with that source water, doesn't matter the method of delivery, trickling, whatever it is. And when you are trickling or changing, but you need to know that water is absolutely spot on before it's going in, or it's going to create issues. But this is going beyond just the superficial stuff and looking a hell of a lot deeper. And until you can fully understand that, my advice is change as little water as possible. That's where we're at. When you fully understand it, by all means, if you want to be a bit more indulgent and you know any problems in your water, you're purifying it and you're doing it all properly, then fantastic, do as you please, basically. But until you're at that point where you do fully understand it, err on the side of caution is where we're at. Just to further add to that before I finish on it, obviously, if you're running a trickle and everything's absolutely fine, you're not getting any problems, don't change it. Don't try to fix what's not broken. But there are issues out there that this could seriously be at the root of and causing a lot of problems. We know it is. The feedback we're getting from people, we know that this making a big change, because people are just blindly been jumping into, oh, you need to trickle water through your pond or run through whatever rates it is. And I've seen the nasty side of all this. So it's just to get a full picture and understanding of what's going on in that mains water and through the end of purifier before you start acting. So anything to add to that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've got one of these annoying brains that has to understand everything to the nth degree. I've literally been writing about this subject this afternoon. I think it's not that we're not advocates of a particular method. It's, is it necessary and what are you gaining from it? For example, I had my source water tested, 1.9 milligrams of copper per litre. Now, to give you some context, that's just below the long-term safe threshold for humans. That's 1.9 milligrams per litre. The safe long-term threshold for copper with koi in my area of the country, which is hard water, is 0.001 0.15 milligrams per litre. So if you just let that sink in for a moment, it's not that we're saying, I think everyone jumps on the headline and says, well, don't you guys say don't do water changes? It's, do you know what's in your water? And if your water that you're putting in is going to have long-term detrimental effects. I had a chat with a marine biologist not too long ago, Ricky, and she was suggesting that this so-called superfluke is nothing but a byproduct of environment and immune suppression caused by environmental problems. Long story short, a lot of case studies, a lot of ponds that I go to, they all have trickle in, trickle out, and fish don't look well, Rick. They've got all
That's
the gear,
what I've seen.
they've got everything, and there's one common denominator. It's constant, and I'm not saying it's bad practice. It's just, if you're doing it blindly, let's be honest with you. If everyone's being honest, are you testing your source water? Because I know how much, you and I know how much that costs, Ricky. It's not cheap.
It's expensive stuff.
And given that it fluctuates regularly, so what's to say that it's fine today and it's not in a month's time? So for me, it's about mitigating risks. And I've always been an advocate of trying to build an ecosystem. If you constantly put chemicals and change the environment, you will not build that ecosystem. There's no simpler way of looking at fish keeping than looking in Japan. They are the absolute masters of it. Okay, yes, they're blessed with areas of water that we can't really compete with. That's just a geological, issue. But we can mimic their techniques. And the more I'm seeing, obviously, I deal with more customers than the average guy, the average hobbyist. And a lot of the problems are subside when the trickle in, trickle out turned off. I don't know what more I can say than that. It's not, I'm not, chlorine and chloramine is one thing, which is bad enough. But if you don't know what you're putting in your pond, to me, it doesn't make sense. If you, like you said, if you're 100% confident, but those levels are bordering on trace levels, Rick. So there is no way of testing off the shelf. There's no test kits that you can do this
with. All laboratory stuff.
So with that in mind, that's just one heavy metal: zinc, copper, magnesium. You go on and on and on, and the compound effect of building these trace levels, the combined effect, is not great. It will age fish. It suppresses immunity. It far impacts growth inhibition more than slightly elevated nitrate. And this is the general thing. Everyone jumps on nitrate. Well, this is the general thing, is people are trying to achieve this perfection of low nitrate, but at what cost? And the reality is we don't know. We just don't know. So I can categorically tell you that heavy metals, even at low levels, will cause far more damage internally, visually. It will age fish far more, and it will inhibit growth, if that's your goal, far more than elevated nitrate.
Obviously, this ecosystem that you mentioned, this is why, I've seen the direct results of how I keep koi. Minimum amount of water, because I want that ecosystem to work. I want the filtration to do its part in that ecosystem of recycling the water, so to speak. And that interference from fresh does rock fins. I can see from, sometimes we have to drain ponds down when we've been moving fish out or whatever it is, and I just know it's normally at least like huge water change I'll have at that point. I know it's normally a good 6-8 weeks, even in an established pond area, before I get that water back and then fish performing. But that ecosystem is so fragile. But you're talking about the big health impacts. The one thing I remember when you was at Perfect Aquatics, you'd come up obviously looking at fish I was raising. The one thing that I think always blew your mind was skin luster. And this is something, and I'll be I would pull a fish out of the shittiest looking pond. We're talking a pond here that's probably got TDS through the roof, too much organics in there, high nitrate. You mention it, and you can barely see down to the bottom with fish. And I pull this fish out, and you just wouldn't have the words. And that was to get that skin luster. This is when you get skin luster at its finest, is when you're hitting the peak, the epitome. The environment's got to be perfect, because you've got to create mucus of the healthiest level in order to achieve that skin luster. And everything we spoke, every contaminant in tap water, from the chlorine level down, will affect, if there's any traces of that kicking in the system, will affect that skin luster massively. It's the first thing you'll lose. It's the first thing you probably won't even notice, because obviously it's attuning your eye to what is top skin luster. But when you do know it and see it and know it's achievable, you very quickly know when it's not there. When it's not there, you very quickly know there's something somewhere in that environment not right. So that's it. That's what we're talking about at that kind of level. But obviously, dumbing it right down, the very basic stuff is it's dangerous. So it's easier to sort of go out there with a blanket advice that don't until you've investigated and fully understand.
That's probably the best in a nutshell. I could go on about this all night, because it's something that I feel fairly passionate about.
This is a great build on for it. So you can buy cartridges to combat metals. To do the work, yes and no is my answer to that. And this is what the stuff that I learned from Anne Telford while she was doing this is. The issue is they do work. It's how quickly these things fill up, for one, because you might buy that cartridge quoted, and this is the problem with an industry, quoted that say you can run 10,000 gallons of water through that. There's so many variables. If you've got astronomical levels of a certain metal, you're going to burn that cartridge up quicker. And the big issue with these metals cartridges, which is why I'd probably avoid them in all honesty, is that the minute they fill up and then become overfill, they start discharging and dumping in higher levels than what was actually running through it previously. And that is dangerous, because it's going to dump them, as opposed to even just coming through at a consistent level, which you've got to watch out for.
I just don't think, for me, it's the modern koi keeper, isn't it? It's flood the pond with water. But the reality is, over the years, you probably had it when you used to run the shop, Rick, where you just go, oh, I've spent thousands on this pond. I've got all the mod cons. My neighbour's got a shitty little pond in his garden. He never does anything, and he never has a problem. Why? Because he's got an environment. He's got a stable ecosystem. And when you get that, and then that's the word that I keep using with people: build an ecosystem, and it will make your life a lot easier. If you constantly look at a reef system. This is a real high-end spectrum of the scenario, but you cannot have any contaminants, because those invertebrates are so sensitive to it. If you apply that to a koi pond, the logic is not too dissimilar. It's just they're a little bit more robust and a little bit more tolerant of it. So for me, it's just not, unless you 100% know what's in that water, it's not.
Keep it to a minimum. That's it. Keep it to a minimum. That's where we're at, guys, with that one. So, and just to contact your water board for a report. It is shocking what's in our water. That's a great starting place, and it's free. However, don't let that be convincing enough, especially if it comes back saying everything's absolutely great. Because again, from working on this in the past, I've had ponds where the water board has come back okay, and the reality of having the mains and pond water tested has been far, far away from the water report, because there's a lot happens in between where they're testing and getting to your tap, and bear that in mind, folks. It's a big one, this. So,
one passing comment, Rick. Just to, it might just give some people a bit of context on things. Water with high copper and zinc as a combination, and when I say high, not particularly high, I'm just talking low levels. The kidney has got to process all of that. Now, the kidney is also in charge of producing the majority of the red blood cells in carp. Now, when that process is inhibited, it impacts oxygen transfer through the fish, which then has a knock-on effect on organs. it has a direct impact on immunity. Not a speculative sort of, it might not. It has a direct, so much so that just double the safe long-term levels of 0.03 milligrams per litre of copper can reduce blood cell reduction by 25%. Now, when you're looking in your pond and the water's nice and clear and the fish are swimming around and they're feeding, you are completely blind to all of this. Completely blind. Now, if you applied that to your own health, you would notice the difference. You can't exert energy. You can't develop muscle mass. You can't develop skeletal mass. You can't. It has a knock-on effect on all these things at a very, very, very low level. So chasing the low nitrate is insurmountable compared to the impact of metals.
Yeah. You've probably gathered, folks, as well, for all this. Me and Chris have very different styles of fish keeping. Chris loves the facts, the ins and outs, the sciencey shit. I've got no time for it, but fair play. You see, it's why we get on quite well together.
Yeah.
Anyway, Martin Stammers, my old friend, your thoughts on source water through RO membranes? For years, hobbyists have put their lack of development through crap water. Running RO got an awful lot of great results for longevity of koi. Absolutely, I can see there's me, but this is just my whole thing, and I've said this is koi keeping for the masses, and unfortunately, RO I don't see as being a thing for the masses in koi keeping because it adds layers and layers of complexity. You can't just, if we could just set up an RO system and run pure RO, fantastic. That's just not going to work for the koi because that water is devoid of everything. So absolutely, as a source water, it's just a pure liquid. But I think, am I right in saying, Chris, with the marine guys, when they use RO, they build it back up with additives before they're using it in the tank?
Yeah, obviously the salt comes into play at that point. But if you're using fresh water for like tropical systems, you would need to remineralize it. Yeah, because there's no elements other than hydrogen.
So other than that, the ways people are running RO in systems is, and again, I'm not completely in tune with all this because it's not something I wish to get involved with, but you've got to run an element of, if you're trickling it, you've got to mix it with normal dechlorinated source water anyway to blend it. People will probably tell me more on that one, but yeah, I can see it. I completely get it. I see it, and I'm there with that one. But my whole thing, and I think mine and Chris's thing, to be honest with you, with Koi Talk as well, is koi keeping for the masses and what we do, improving things and giving the best knowledge for the masses. And unfortunately, RO, you're buying the system, you're buying all the test equipment to go with it. You've got membranes, cartridges to be replacing. You're using loads more water. All that things as well, unfortunately, takes it out of the realms of the masses, in my opinion, and that's why it's not something I'm going to start advocating or banging the drum on. If you can use it for topping up and remineralize and build that water up, that's, I see there, that's going to be a separate system where you've got to be setting that water up before you add it to the pond. Fair play. It's a route that does work for people. Absolutely, I can see it, but again, that's where I'm at on that one. Anything to add to that, Chris?
Yeah, I just don't. I don't think it's applicable to your average hobbyist, and you know, I fully understand the concept behind it, the science behind it. The customers that I've got on it, I mean, yeah, they love the results, but geez, do they put a lot of tinkering and prattling around with it?
Yeah,
I just don't think it's something that if you've got the time, the resources, by all means, I'm sure you will benefit from doing it. But I just think your average hobbyist is going to open up a whole lot of doors that are going to cause them a lot more hassle.
Yeah, I mean, just the whole instability of, at that point, you're also running very soft water, unless you're really having to mix it a lot. So at that point, unless you are, so you're going to be running a lot of RO, your water's going to soften a lot. And then there's elements there of added risk as well that you've got to manage in pH stability and KH stability and all the rest of it. So again, not one I'm gonna crack on with. But yeah, just one more question I've seen crop up, which I think is quite a good one. Very interesting this evening, guys. Thank you. From a very basic hobbyist, how can we keep clear water and keep the ecosystem good if we are suggesting not to change a lot of water? that doesn't come down to water clarity, doesn't really come down to changing lots of water. A good system, for me, good filtration system. We're talking about clarity for one, obviously your mechanical filtration, flow rates and retention time through your system, flow rates, retention time through your UV as well, enough filtration capacity, all these things, the food that you're using, that's another one straight away. A bad food is going to cause a lot of pollution that your system's got to then deal with, which is a pain in the arse. It's all added hassle to it. If we're talking about water staining in regards to sort of organic buildup and things like that, then foam fractionation probably not talked about enough. It's a natural process in water. When a pond starts foaming, that is again a natural part of an ecosystem. That is the ecosystem trying to extract the organics from the water by creating a stable foam. And there are devices on the market that actually do that to keep the foam off the water, create a stable foam.
Either.
No, that then can, there's levels of them in there. I've had, been a mass advocate of the clarity unit in the past, done a cracking job on some clients' ponds they haven't. That there, again, mitigates you needing to use loads of fresh water to do what that, in essence, a device that's creating a natural effect is doing for you. Very less, and again, I don't want this to go into a thing, but potassium permanganate, some people do use it. I'm not going to advocate just using that over and over just for the sake of water clarity, but it is something that gets rid of organics in water. There's loads of different things, bacteria-based products. PSB bacteria was absolutely great at this because it's a cleaning bacteria. Photosynthetic bacteria is a cleaning one and eats away at organics. So, and people, that's probably a product up there with like Saki that I do recommend a lot because it's proven to work for people over years. And that's truly been the case. Any dealer I've ever suggested stocking the product has got the same feedback from customers time and time again. It's an incredibly fresh product. You can't buy it in winter. It's just made seasonal in batches and does a really good job. So there's loads of different means of delivering the same results without having to flood loads of water into your system. So any more to add to that, Chris?
No, I think it's you pretty much covered it there. I think it's about having a bit of faith in the system that you got as well. I think people don't really know the full extent as to what their filters can achieve, and they interrupt that cycle by doing loads of water changes. It takes a long time for a system to be fully mature, and obviously if you're interrupting that constantly by putting tap water in the system, albeit treated, you're going to get these fluctuations. So also chasing really, really clear water. What are the added benefits there for the fish?
That's a big one, that, yeah.
Well, it's like when people were saying about the nitrates. You've got gin clear water. What eats nitrates and phosphates? Yeah.
There's clear, and then there's obsessive.
There's answers to everything. Our thing is just about mitigating risks, and probably people, you and I take it in our stride, Rick, but we're sort of managing one of the biggest stockists of Japanese koi in Europe, and these are things that we just sort of take for granted some days. So you said it before about people that have got one pond in their back garden, and it's keeping them up at night. It's just not, for me, it's just not the way koi keeping should be done. And I think more layers that you add
we're trying to get across. Yeah.
So sometimes, not always, but sometimes less is more.
I like that. That's the PSB price gone up.
Yeah, probably.
Brilliant.
Nothing's going down.
Yeah, that's it's just about the thing. That is what, you're right. I have said that. It's the fact that so many fish up there kept by these methods, simplicity built on decades of experience now, and it's through people getting bad advice, overcomplicating stuff, blah blah blah, all the rest of it, that just creating a world of problems that just don't need to exist. So it's tough. Obviously, we've got to try and break it down, dissect it, and then obviously the way in which it's then received. Because it's quite easy to sit here and say a load of stuff, but it's making sure we're very conscious that it's received in the right way.
Yeah.
And people don't take, let's say, if you sat at home and you think everything's great, then yeah, by all means listen, but don't go tinkering and mucking around with it. That's the last thing I'd ever tell you to do.
Yeah.
But if you are finding, it's not enjoyable, and that's the bit with things, it's heartbreaking for us to see people not enjoying the hobby or leaving the hobby because it's just too difficult. When I really don't think koi keeping is all that difficult, not compared with other fish keeping. Again, you talk about marines. I love marine tank, but I just won't go near one.
Good.
Because that's just, yeah. I should try it actually, mix the marine world up a little bit.
No. You get eaten alive, mate, in the marine world.
I think so. Probably grow them quite well, though.
Oh, I'm sure you would, mate. Yeah.
Find a way. Right, folks, enough on all that. Let's get on to some koi appreciation stuff. And I think, to be fair, having seen Chris's face when this popped up on screen before we come on air, he's not seen this one out my archives. I think you're really going to love this. So, Kohaku this evening from NMD. This is an NMD. This was actually from their very first spawn of Kohaku many years ago now. Trying to think, I think it might have been at the time of starting Koi Wholesale. It was actually the time when I did my first venture koi growers. So we're probably chosen to stay in Japan. So I was offered several fish. This one was picked by the client, and we kept it in Japan as Azakari. Now, it was based on, I knew a bit about the liners had done, but this spawning was very sort of unknown. I was really basing it, judged on what was my advice was we were looking at what's in front of us here, because the lineage, knowing the parents, etc., you can gauge little bits of what might come, but it was a whole new mix. Therefore, the results were a little bit unknown. First thing that sort of got mentioned with this one, curiously enough, was that NMD had jumbo toesai at this point that were like 45 cm, the same age, and the client knew it. So his first question to me was, why is that one so small? Well, this was actually what some breeders term a second crop spawning. So it actually got spawned really late. I think it was like August this particular year. So they've obviously had several months less time to grow than the other fish, which had been on the first round of spawnings. And my words to him was, don't worry. I think what's going to happen here, which is the case, is it's going to play catch up over the next couple of years, because there were very good parents used. The fish is showing really good signs. We'll get on some of the elements of what's in that. Bone structure, let's look at that first of all, and body shape. It was showing everything there that it really needed to show. Cracking head on it, really big head, great mouth. It was really well set. You see good length on the body as well. Everything I've spoke about in the last sort of 2 episodes on this as well. All them elements, nice. The body line running well, nice width at the peduncle, but also a nice smooth sort of taper from the behind the head down to there. Nice fin proportions. Ticked every box in that respect. So knowing all this, look, don't worry, because there is really a limit to how far these fish will go. Ultimately, the governing aspect on the top end of it is the genetics. If that show genetically can't really go above 70 cm, it doesn't matter what size it is for its age. There's only very few freaks out of that will push beyond it, but it's always going to be a limiting factor. And I've seen that happen while we're on NMD. It was with a Sankey. So they had a rough average size every year these were getting to, but this one particular Sankey, absolutely just this year, average Nisai size was like 55, 58 cm. This one was 65, I think. And you could just see it in its body. It was a one-off. It was an animal. It was set completely differently to all the other fish. And that is now, even from all those years, it was around the same time as this, I think, that is used as a parent still. It really went the distance and saw that. But on average, they're governed by genetics on the max size. So whether or not it's a 25 cm or a 50 cm toe size, generally the end result's still going to be the same. It's just how quickly that you get in there. So yeah, saw that. Benny quality was one for me. If I remember right, they'd used some Nogami blood in this lineage, which is a go-to for a lot of breeders. And I did see that coming through. The Benny in the Garmin Koraku is a bit of a one-off with that Danichi heritage steeped in it. Chris has seen them; they're pretty mind-blowing, and sort of like the how luminous this Benny looked gave me that feeling that was a big sort of trait maybe coming through there, and appealing as well. That really intense hue of Benny, and you can see the intense Shiroji as well. Is a nice trait to see. And then big points we really liked here. Kiwa, that back edge of the scale, already you can see even at this age it was really well defined and really pleasing, And the most important one for me, this being a grow on, and really an attribute I liked was the sashi, and that's the reason I've mainly picked this fish, is to demonstrate the lesson in this area really, because the sashi here, so the front edge, for those who aren't aware, on the Benny, is the element that here, to me, if you're asking me for absolute perfect sashi for most young kohaku with good growth potential, you're looking at it right there. It's got a nice thickness. It's not too deep, but there is a bit of depth there. Normal for the sort of Benny type that has, where the thicker red Bennies can often have a slightly deeper sashi as well. But most importantly, regardless of the depth, look at the consistency of it across every dan of the pattern. So every step of the pattern, it is the same depth, same thickness, same consistency, going right through to the very last dan at the far end of the fish. Absolutely insane. And that I knew at that point that there was ultimate color stability here, loads more depth to come from the color as well, even more than you see in that. Right now, that color didn't actually have that much depth. The depth's got to develop and thickness has got to come, but I knew that would come looking at that sashi and what was going off. So yeah, starfish. And then the bit you can't really ignore there, I think, to be fair, Chris, is that pattern.
I mean, you're not going to find too many 6-step patterns, mate. No.
Absolute worldy like, which was a big one, because like you say, that's not something that you do see every day, to be fair. So right, let me find another picture here. So I believe this was the fish after the first growing season. So that's after the first season in the mud pond. That's where we got to, and I can't remember. You're gonna have to. You can't hold me to. I think size-wise got to about 45, 48, something like that, which was huge growth, really. I mean, you're talking. Or it might have got closer to 50. Pretty much nearly doubled in size from what I can remember, which is just huge growth. Interestingly, here the jumbo tosa, yes, although they'll have been bigger, obviously at this point, their actual amount of growth in centimeters will have been far less than this fish. You know, a 45 cm tosa doesn't go into the mud pond and double in size. It's just not. It's not physically possible for most of them. So that's where this one got to. Now, the big thing I want to sort of point out here, and I've got a picture prepared if I find the right one. Can see how, in my opinion, here you can see noticeably that the hue of the Benny's changed, and so much more thickness has come at this point. Not only has it got more intense, that's the hue, but the actual thickness of the color has progressed. It looks deeper, it looks more intense. And what's happened with the sashi, I find quite interesting, is I think the sashi actually looks a bit messier at this point, because what's probably happened is there's been a bit of Benny consolidation. It's got a bit tighter, and some of that sashi's pushed through a little bit more as well. It's actually become more pronounced and more visible because of that movement in the rest of the Benny. But yeah, I mean, superb result at this point, looking absolutely insane. It's got the growth, and at this point, my advice was to the customer, leave this fish in Japan, because I think it can really go the distance, and I do believe it's the best place for it. And completely confident as well that as that size comes, that sashi is going to really refine to a very, very nice edge. So plus the big one here, still on body and bone structure, we can see that it's gained length. Obviously, it's had a big spurt in length. Not too much body volume gained at this point. but the bone structure, we can see the head's got a bit wider, everything's got a bit thicker there, and the body has got a bit wider. So that was my advice, that there's still a lot more to come from this. It's had that big burst in length now, and it's time then for it to start getting some body. So it stayed for another season, and that was it then at that point. So we're now sans eye at this point, and again, really right on point. The body thickness is starting to come now. The colour actually almost looked like it's softened off a little bit at this point, which could be normal if it's had a big growth spurt, completely normal part of the process. But look here at what's happened to the sashi. It's really started pulling in tight now at this point. With loads of sort of movement going on in the skin, things contracting, stretching, all the rest of it over this period. And yeah, obviously when we talk about coagulant, there's not too much that can change and develop, but here you're just seeing a process that this fish has gone through, and how you can't expect, as the intensity of the benny's dropped off here, that's clear to see, but it's gained more thickness. It's actually gained a bit of softness to it at this point, which, like I say, if it's been really putting a lot of weight on, that's quite normal. The one thing you will notice throughout, however, the Shiroji has maintained from Tosai right through to now at Sanzai. It's just not phased it. It's stayed with that real pure white intensity to it. So again, discussion time with the client. This is where it can get really tricky ground, because there's no sort of guarantees at this point. Actually, there weren't from year 2 to year 3, but I still believe the best place for this was in the mud pond. So advice again was to leave it. Again, there's no risk, and it's already been a good result. This is always the gamble with Azakari fish, because it's like it's such a locus, isn't it? Yeah, it's like it's done well. There's always that chance it can go wrong. I mean, at this point, what a fish this is. I mean, it's an absolute. You just don't see many 6-step kohaku with that level of quality and detail to it. But I trust the guys at NND. This is where this was. I know firsthand how well they look after him. So advice was leave it. And yeah, sure enough,
Minger.
There we go. That was 4 years old. Obviously, the angle of the picture's changed slightly, but it's 70 cm, so cracking size at this point. But just look at that intensity of the Benny come back as it's obviously matured. Look at where the sashi's at now. It's almost finished. It's almost razor tight on the front, as well as it is the back, and the whole elegance and the way the fish is carrying and everything, just absolutely superb. So very predictable fish. You see here, look, side by side, the real focus for them two there. I mean, that's Nisai to Yonzai, 2 years to 4 years. Look at what's going on with the sashi. The transformation in that area of the fish more than anything. And just as I'm looking at that, even as well, on the third step, so the third down of the pattern, as we're looking at this, if you look on the right-hand side, you can actually see how at Nisai, part of the Benny was probably more free, more loose in the pattern, and now it actually blocked together more at that point. And again, that's movement within the pigment filling the scales and the whole thing, just sort of adapting and changing as it grows. So yeah, that's the reason I want to share that fish. I just think how that's transformed. Not too much can change with these, but sashi can be a hard one to understand. But you can see there, everything sort of played out. You've got the Benny, you've got the thickness of the colour, the sashi has come together. It's all just normal parts of the process that I've shown you there. And yeah, wow, what a fish!
Absolutely.
One for magazine at some point, that, Chris, I think.
Yeah, I reckon so, mate. It wouldn't look out of place.
Not a bad one out of the archives.
No, it's nice, mate. Very nice.
So yeah, let me just tap into the questions, see if there's anything there that people's thrown in on. No, fair play. I think we must have explained that one well enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, great fish. That's just prime example there, folks, of some development. I did just see last week presented 2 shows, but the first one seemed to have a lump on the side, a short head. Could you go back to that one again? I'm not quite sure if we were looking at different fish there. Just bear with me a minute. I think we've still got them. So we did this one last week, and then that beast. So I'm not quite sure if you're any of them, but I'm not seeing any lumps or short heads there. So if you want to clarify on that one for me, I'll be quite happy to try and answer it. But yeah, there we have it, mate. Thanks for your input, Chris.
No bother.
Oh, hang on. I'm keeping it quiet. He's asked a question about food twice. Just seeing that one. Have we got them comments, Steve? Can you dig them out for us? So we always try our best. It is absolutely red hot in this office as well. What is a good all-round good food for fish health? I'm not pushing growth or colour, just looking for healthy, happy fish. My answer on that one would be go with something like Saki Balance. Absolute great all-rounder. But yeah, if you're not trying to push, you'll still get good results with it, but it's just not a case of changing to a growth food. A growth food is built for that very specific reason. So yeah, I see no issues with that, and we'll do the job. There we go. Get back to it. Oh, that's it. Sorry, one we've forgot. So just bear with me a minute, folks. Last week we had Martin on from Clark's Koi, and yeah, the competition that he mentioned. The winner, to announce it, was Andy Miller from Falkirk, who has won the £200 voucher with Martin.
Wow.
With the correct answer that I was a 12-year-old child when I first went to Japan in 2002. So got some great pictures of that one as well in my tracksuits that were massively oversized, that my mum and dad were still buying for me, my mum was still buying for me. Looked an absolute twat, to be honest. So might share one of them next week for a laugh.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Brilliant. And yeah, not to forget, folks, while we're still on, back issues, actually get it on the camera. If you want to order some back issues, 50% off until the end of the week if you use the voucher code there at the bottom of the screen. But other than that, sorry if we've missed your comments. We will compile them as always and try and work through in future episodes. But thank you very much, everyone. Sorry, just hang on a minute. First show, a second picture. It's slightly carved on the right. Yes, I agree with you. I think I did say last week, it's a terrible picture. And that is something you have to sort of learn to, it's something I've had to learn to look through over the years, especially when I'm doing business remotely. It's that one. So angle of the picture, sort of where it's sat over the fish a bit too much. It's just how the body's playing out. You can actually look at the head direction, the way the head's pointing, the rest of the body actually fits in line with that. This is some of the things you have to sort of learn to look through, understanding these pictures. So yeah, so absolutely.
A bit of an illusion there as well.
Yeah,
the pigment can create a bit of an illusion, particularly when Sumi's sort of running alongside Shiroji on the side of the fish.
It's a nightmare on pictures, isn't it? That one.
It's really something that you when you see a moving like a video or in the flesh, it's a game changer.
But if you naturally there sort of marry up where the mouth's pointing, where the rest of the body's curving, and then where the tail's, but you can see the sort of trajectory the fish was on. And that's great example there though of how a picture can really send you down a different path. Yeah. Tough one for dealers when fish are obviously being sold online, because trying to get all these things right, it's a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, maybe at some point that's one we can tackle, Chris, in the mag, maybe getting some tips on learning to see through stuff like that for people who do want to buy koi online. It's an ever growing ever-growing side of the industry. So maybe we'll try and put some info together and shed some more light on that from our experiences. So that really is it now, folks. Thank you very much for your time, and yeah, I'll see you all on next week's episode. For now, enjoy.